Hi, people. So I'm going to get straight to this. I'm just going to read out a report from the Daily Mail. This is the 15th it's just dropped, the 15th of June. The report above it is actually the state funeral of Silvio Berlusconi. Very divisive event. It kind of reminds me of when Thatcher died here a decade ago. You know, Berlusconi, like Thatcher, controversial, divisive figure. Um, some very strong support, but also I think a lot of public consternation that this man got honoured in such a way. But anyway, that's just I'm going to show you the reports. So wondering what this is, that's what that's about. This is what I'm going to be reading out though, unrelated to Berlusconi. Um, Trans teacher was treated like paedophile. Now I'm going to read this out. Bear with me. It's middle sort of length. The report's by Chris Brook. Senior teacher was treated like a paedophile and faced being banned over a science lesson on puberty that upset children with gender identity issues. Roy Huggins, 54, a history teacher with more than 30 years' experience, was asked to fill in to teach a class of 11 and 12-year-olds at secondary school in Nottinghamshire. He described the physical changes to the bodies of boys and girls using a national curriculum textbook and gave further information to help pupils understand. Sounds to me like a professional teacher. Unknown to Mr. Huggins, who was working part time as a supply teacher at the time, there were at least two pupils in the Year 7 class at Retford Oaks Academy who were diagnosed with gender dysphoria. He was reported to the local authority safeguarding body after pupils complained of inappropriate remarks he made during the lesson in late March. Assume that's this year. When Mr. Huggins was cleared of wrongdoing, the head teacher of the school referred him to the Disclosure and Barring Service. So this was after he was cleared of wrongdoing. The DBS, which can ban teachers from working with children. It was a nightmare 2 months during which he became suicidal as his reputation was put at risk. Mr. Huggins said it was the worst thing that can ever happen to you as a teacher. You're being put through the same process as though you were a paedophile or hit or harmed a child. It utterly destroyed my confidence and left me at times feeling suicidal. Last week, Mr. Huggins was told by the DBS that he was in the clear as there's no case to answer. He decided to reveal his ordeal as a cautionary tale of the difficulties teachers face navigating today's gender identity minefield. He said the school authorities threw me to the lions and were prepared to sacrifice people on the altar of these ideologies. Mr. Huggins added that he had no training in teaching the topic. Remember, he was a supply teacher. He said the textbook described how boys develop broader shoulders and girls develop wider hips. One child said to me, "Sir, why do women have bigger hips?" To which I replied, "To have children." Now, this is just a biological fact. In fact, if you look at skeletons, actually, female skeletons, the head of a child only fits through the um, uh, female skeleton in that way. He added that boys will also develop muscles during puberty. Mr. Huggins said he had no idea that pupils in the class had been diagnosed with gender dysphoria and were upset by his comments. He was accused of saying boys must be muscly to attract girls, boys must start at the gym at 12 to get muscly, and girls get hip to allow them to childbear, something all women should do. That sounds like those claims sound dubious. I mean, I wasn't there, but I really question if he used those exact words. Mr. Huggins said the comments were either untrue, taken out of context, or misunderstood. In a statement to the local authority, he said he was at a complete loss over the allegations, which he deemed laughable. Despite being cleared, he has not received an apology. I must inform any school of the investigation if he applies for future work. Spokesman for the Diverse Academies Trust, which runs the school, declined to comment. Um, right, I'm going to get straight to this. I was disgusted by this, and I've actually emailed the Diverse Academies Trust to tell them what I thought of this. Now, let's be very clear with the information that is available. This wasn't a teacher coming out with some sort of conservative lecture or countering whatever his views on trans issues are or not. In fact, that isn't even disclosed. Um, this was a teacher following the national curriculum. I'll repeat that, following the national curriculum. Um, and he's basically being punished for that. I think what's concerning about this case is you have children, 12-year-olds, 11 and 12-year-olds, who think that they've got gender dysphoria because they've been diagnosed that way. Well, actually, the diagnosis of children itself is a controversial area. There is a lot of professionals in this field who know more about the subject than I do, who have questioned that, who've questioned why putting that label on children is really necessary when it may well be that the child is simply, if she's a girl, a tomboy, or if a boy, maybe he's gay. Um, doesn't necessarily mean that they have gender dysphoria. I mean, this is not an exact science; it's still being explored. Um, but even if that is true, A, he didn't know, and B, what you're essentially saying is that children can dictate how a lesson is run. If children feel offended, then a teacher can be fed to the lions. It's simply not right. Now, if he did say those things, maybe it's a little bit unprofessional, but I just think, given the trajectory that we're on, with the militant trans lobby pushing this stuff, I don't think he would have said this stuff. I think it is basically what it appears to be. I think he was trying to do his job, and I think he's being persecuted because this is very clearly a woke trust, and they they want to make an example of him. How dare you question our trans orthodox um, narrative? So that they're feeding him to the lions. I mean, this is an ordeal that put this man to the point of suicide. Thank God he didn't go through with it. But it makes it makes you wonder who would want to be a teacher in this environment. I mean, I come from a teaching background. I'm a tutor. I don't teach in British schools. And frankly, given my views on this channel, I wouldn't get a job because they'd probably find out this and say, "Oh, this guy's a transphobe." I'm not actually, but it's such a hypersensitive environment. I mean, I accept that with children, there's always going to be a sensitive area, and it should be. Safeguarding is an extremely important thing, but it should not be at the price of common sense, and it should not be at the price of persecuting someone when they've done nothing wrong. Um, and the real question is this: are these children really suffering gender dysphoria, or is it actually a case that they're being influenced by woke adults? I'd be curious what sort of ideology their parents carry, you know, because I would not be surprised, and I don't know, I can't say this for a fact, but I would not at all be surprised if their parents sort of push a very hard left narrative and they've been influenced by that. 11 and 12-year-olds are very easily influenced. This isn't, a patronizing statement, it's just reality. Young people are still developing their thinking, they're still developing the worldviews, my goodness, an 11 and 12-year-old are children. Um, it basically gets into the same realm as puberty blockers for young children. Um, if that's just went a little bit faded, my battery's running though, so I'm going to wrap this up soon. Puberty blockers for young children. Teenage girls being given, straps to basically flatten their breasts, and in some cases even having mastectomies when they're old enough to go through a transition, but then in their 20s regretting it. And in some cases, tragically, they can never conceive because of these operations. And my concern is a lot of troubled young people are being forced into this. I mean, arguably, that's real conversion therapy when it comes to trans issues. Um, and frankly, I think it's child abuse. Um, I do believe that there are adults pushing an agenda. I mean, the very concept of trans children, it's an oxymoron because to legally transition, you have to be 18. So the idea of a trans child, it's just nonsense. Um, but how many other teachers are going to have to go through this sort of ordeal simply for trying to do their job? I mean, it's awful. And I think it is an absolute disgrace. It's a cowardly travesty that this disgraceful trust, the Diverse Academies Trust, has seen the need to, really persecute this man. And this is a guy who's 30 years of experience. He's clearly a professional teacher. He's There's no reports that he's ever had any misconduct hearings. He's never abused a child. He's never, and yet he's being tarnished like he's a predator. It's a disgrace. I just hope he can rebuild his mental health, and I hope common sense prevails. And I imagine he's left that school. I mean, if I were him, I wouldn't want to work there after the way he treated him. Even if they do apologize, I'd want to work somewhere else. But clearly teaching has been his calling, his background, and it's really not the first such case. I remember a few years ago, there was a former police officer who was dragged to court for transphobia, using the wrong pronouns, and he got cleared in the end. This is happening very often now. The Daily Mail, I don't agree with everything they come out with. Certainly not their adulation of Boris Johnson. That's for another video. It's not my go-to paper. I will give credit where credit's due. The Daily Mail will highlight things like this. I give them credit for that. You won't get it in the Times, at least not in the same way. You certainly won't get it in the Eye or the Guardian. So credit where credit's due. I think, thank God for a free press, really. What this man's done is obviously try to highlight his case as a cautionary tale, as he puts it, to other teachers. But what teacher would want to get into this arena, in this sort of environment where they are persecuted for simply stating biological facts? There are a lot of questions around this case, and coming from a teaching background myself, I've huge empathy for what this guy went through, um, and I think it's a disgrace the way he's been treated. And finally, I just think that the trans narrative and the trans attitude to children really, really needs to come under scrutiny. I think it's child abuse. Really do. It's one thing, an adult making the decision to transition because they really, really do feel uncomfortable in their body, and that's a decision, and as an adult, whatever people think of it, that's a decision. Children, no way, absolutely no way should be children being pressured or coerced into this. It's just, I think it's very disturbing, actually.